we are live. There it is. Okay, we probably was like 5 seconds before that, but
That's
whatever.
fine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to those of you that are going to join us today. To those of you that are probably already here, probably no one, probably we don't know. We don't know. Today is going to be a
Fine.
wonderful conversation with my good friend. We known each other now for a year and some months now.
Yeah.
Yay! It's
Yay!
been that long. So we're gonna go over a lot of different things within this conversation today. For those of you who have things that you want to input, please use the chat for doing so, and we'll make sure to always be looking at the chat, bring the chat in as much as we can. We'll also be looking forward to just hearing some people's feedback and concerns, maybe if you have any with any of the things that we're talking about, and how that may affect you from your lens and how you view things in society. Because the voice of many in this, and the more we can have this conversation, the better ultimately things can get for individuals. At least that is the hope. That is always the goal. We don't want things to get worse for anybody, and we're not hoping for hate shit towards anyone. So will not be that. We are trying to create a safe space here. With all of that being said, let's introduce our co-host, I guess, for today, right? I guess we can call her that.
Yeah. For today, hi, I'm Quinn. I'm a good friend of Tyler's. We I try and steal his kids from him. It's great. I love it.
Yes, she does. She never got
I do.
close though. Don't worry about it, yeah. Don't worry.
I know. Not yet. Not yet. Just wait till I move back. Just wait till I move back.
She hasn't gotten close at all. Okay, I'm joking. um, so I guess we can just talk a little bit about yourself while we give people time to tune in and come and watch the stream, right? If that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. What do you want to know about me? What do the people want to know?
I mean, I guess one thing for sure, we're gonna have that one person or those couple of people that's like, so who are you? What do you even know about anything type of thing.
Right,
So
right. Okay, that's fine. Here are my credentials for talking about things like women empowerment. I'm 21 years old and I was raised as a woman my entire life. Those are my credentials. Um, Other than that, I am just kind of a open-minded person who always is looking for answers, and I like to talk about things like this. And I think that if we bar everyday people from having these conversations, then nothing is going to happen. So, let's not worry too much about the credentials and let's focus on an idea that we have. How can we, as regular people, do better for other regular people?
facts. So for if none of you caught that, her credentials are sorry, apologize. Their
It's cool.
credentials is simply the fact that they live in a society.
I li- that's it. That's actually what I came here to say is that we live in a society and I also do. So that is my credentials for this topic. Also, yeah, you caught that. I do use they, them pronouns. So the secret to this me talking about women's empowerment is that I'm not a woman. Isn't that it's insanity?
It's crazy. Oh my god.
So here are two non-women talking about women's empowerment. And I think that we are allowed to.
I most definitely think so, especially in this society. It's one of those things as a hey, it's Chris. It's one of those things like as a black male in our current society, in our day and age, if we reserved all of the conversations about black issues to just be simply black people to talk about those, then eventually we'll get to a point to where nothing will change systemically because black people are not even in those positions to do that change and to make that
Right.
change. So the more conversation you can have based around other individuals and individuals in your society that are not heinous, that are educational for the most part, and you have a sense of doing the right thing, and you have gathered enough information to believe you're doing the right thing, then it's okay to have these conversations. And if you get things wrong, if somebody tell you that you got different things wrong, then you just listen to them. It's not that hard.
Right. It's not that hard. Your opinion now does not have to be your opinion for your entire life. It is the beauty of being human. We get to change our minds all the time. Um
Exactly.
Also, since we're talking about women's empowerment, when you're talking about that and the history of, I mean, if you're talking about women's history, you are never going to get very far without talking about the patriarchy, which is to blame in a lot of systemic issues that we see that affect all sorts of people, not just women, although women have historically been the predominant group.
Hmm.
But I mean, we could sit here and also talk about gender for hours and what is gender and why is it that these people were named as women and these people weren't, and we can talk all about that too, but that's not the point. The point is that there are lots of people who aren't women who were treated like women because that's where they sort of fit into things, and history is complicated like that because humans really like neat little boxes to check off, but we don't get those very much. So we try and force our way into them sometimes.
Exactly. And we're trying to either, for the most part, what I think society is trying to do, we're trying to widen those boxes. We're not trying to break these boxes down because our society just somewhat doesn't
It's
function. There's
they
some.
don't some people just really want the boxes. They want to
Exactly.
have the boxes so badly and they will throw fits for years if you don't have the boxes. So it's fine if you need a box, check off the box, but other people don't want to live in the box. It's okay.
Exactly.
You don't have to. It's all right.
For you, it might be a box. For others, it might be a cage. But
Right.
I say let's move into the meat and potatoes of today's conversation, right?
All right. Let's
Um,
talk about it.
let's. So one thing that happens a lot is just like in Black History Month. And I'll refer a lot back to race because I'm a black man and that's what I understand.
Right.
And it's good to make these kind of connections when talking about
Absolutely.
these issues. But you know, a lot of hatred tends to come out towards women, especially during this month because it's your month and we don't have a month or type of ideology. But also,
Mhm.
a lot of women get encouraged to come out to speak forth and to share their stories on many different topics. So one of the things that's been very popular, I guess, coming from TikTok, coming from talking to Ava about the things that she's getting on her TikToks and notice on her TikTok. Um, there's a lot of women coming forth about stories of sexual harassment, and and
Mhm.
and um. And a lot of the times, what they will say is every woman has a story, and then immediately the response to that from a lot of different men from all walks of life will be not all men. So let's talk about
Yeah.
not all men for a
Let's
second.
I love to talk about not all men. Um, I think one of the most succinct counters I've heard to not all men has been, but there are enough.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that is the simplest way to put it in why the not all men thought is just not logically sound.
Hmm.
Um, it's just I understand that not this. Okay, so let me back up a little bit because I guarantee you that if you are talking to a woman and she says something along the lines of "I hate men" or something like that. I mean, there's lots of I'm not talking about the morality behind saying that or the social causes and effects of that, but if you want to talk about why the response "not all men are like that" though isn't helpful and
Hmm.
doesn't fix anything. And that's because at the end of the day, she probably knows that already. Uh, And I think that this is something that is a societal thing too, with a lot of things that women, especially when a woman brings up an issue, um, people are very quick to try and find a hole in their thinking.
Hmm.
Um, And I mean, of course, that's the case anytime that you want to debate, another person. You're trying to pick apart their argument and you want to make your argument more sound, obviously. But if you look at things from kind of a larger historical lens, women have also often been silenced by saying things like, "Yeah, but it's not. It could be this. It could be
Yeah.
that. You have it better than others." And that does get frustrating because honestly, at the end of the day, i- sure, it could be worse, but why would I not want it to be better?
Yeah.
Um, so the concept of not all men, I can rattle off statistics that I have memorized, or I can just use the analogy. The M&M analogy is one that I hear a lot that I
Mm.
think works really well if you're trying to very simply um, if you're trying to kind of come up with a simple way to understand why a lot of women don't feel safe around men in large groups. They don't feel safe, going out by themselves, things like that. Things that men say, oh, well, if you weren't so paranoid, you might as well, you could just do it. It's fine. You're being paranoid.
Yeah.
The M&M analogy is you have a big bowl of M&Ms. Um, and 20 of those M&Ms are poisoned and they will kill you if you eat them. So, no, not all the M&Ms are poisoned, but your chances of reaching in, grabbing a handful, and grabbing a poisoned one is pretty high, way higher than most people would be comfortable taking the risk for. And that is sort of what life is like when you live in a world where 1 in 3 women will experience sexual assault or rape. You are you are always in the middle of that M&M bowl and you don't know which one is poisoned
Mm.
because the ones that are poisoned look just like the regular ones.
Mm.
There is no, I mean, the other thing, and people make jokes about, what a rapist looks like, what a pedophile looks like, but a lot of the times, the people that women and, not just women, obviously, other queer people, men too,
Mm-hmm.
the ones that are being assaulted,
Yeah.
it's more than likely going to be somebody that they already knew.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be somebody that they trusted, somebody that they invited back up to their room because they thought this is going to be a good time. They're not often situations where, the idea of the
The
rapist in the
creepy
dark
guy.
alley,
Yeah.
I mean, it's still a fear, obviously, because that's, something that's been drilled into us forever.
And it still does exist
It
out there.
still does happen. It
Mm-hmm.
absolutely still happens, but more likely than not, that's not where you're going to get into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen when you let your guard down because you trusted somebody.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that people who say not all men fundamentally don't understand
Mm-hmm.
is that it is not about it isn't about hating a specific gender necessarily. It is about the fact that in our society women are not made to feel safe with
Mm-hmm.
men. um that's not something. It's also, I mean, it's also something that's always put on us to take care of.
Mm.
That's, I think, the other thing that gets frustrating when people say not all men, is that it's not, it shouldn't be on the potential victim to
Yeah.
stop it from happening. you know there Less men should rape women.
Mm. Like just facts. Just
Like, yeah.
facts. It shouldn't be this idea that a lot of numbers that men like to spit out when they're talking about this topic, or when they're the people that's like not all men. They point out to the statistics of the world and how there are more people who are identified at birth as women in the world than there are males. So therefore, there can't, it just doesn't add up. The ratios don't add up. And then you sit there and you think about how flawed one that statistic is, right? So when you think about statistics, there are many different ways to think about them. One, you can think about them as a local statistic. So locally, like let's take California for example. Let's say locally in Los Angeles. You look at Los Angeles and you say, okay, how many men are in Los Angeles are convicted of some form of sexual harassment, right? You look at that
Hmm.
number, and then you look at another place like Texas, and you look at a city in Texas, and you look at the number of men and the number of women within there, and you look at the statistics, and then you can concur from those statistics, hey, in California, Los Angeles, whatever city you took, there are X amount of people who are male who committed a sexual offense. In
Mhm.
Texas, there are X amount of people who are male committed a sexual harassment or some type of sexual offense. Therefore, there is this amount of men out there who are raping, right? That will be flawed because you only took two cities. Now, when you take the whole fucking world and, and you make that your statistic, then you failed at what you are trying to accomplish because because you just not only did you make your pool way too wide, you made it to where you're not specifying what you're looking for, right?
Mm-mm.
There's a difference between every woman having a story and every woman being raped. You can
Right.
be a male who is um very welcoming, very open, very careless in how you treat people and so forth because you just love all people and you care about all people and still make a mistake when it comes to offending our committing some type of act of I don't want to say sexual harassment, but of harassment towards another person, let alone a
You
woman.
can just call it, I mean, you can just call it misogyny when you're talking about a woman. I mean,
Exactly.
this that is, in the same way that a person who's white like me
Mhm.
can, have empathy for people of color, especially black people since I'm talking to you. In this case, you can have that empathy and you can still say something that's racist.
Exactly.
Like I still say things without thinking and then I go, that was racist. I
Yeah.
need to unlearn that.
Yeah.
That
Exactly.
is flawed thinking. You can do the exact same thing with misogyny. And I mean,
Mhm.
there's internalized misogyny too,
Mm.
um, in the same way that there's internalized racism.
Yeah.
You
Uh,
know, you, and when there's a lot of parallels. Oh my
mhm.
gosh. I don't know if you heard that on your end because it was very loud for me.
No, I didn't hear it on my end.
Okay. Okay.
I will say, not to cut you off, but I will say to give a good example of this to my males out there who may be having a hard time functioning with this. How often are you wearing your shorts of whatever kind, and you're just randomly in public, just adjusting yourself, just adjusting yourself, just out in public? How often do you do that? Now, you may not know it consciously, but you may have just made someone else feel uncomfortable. But is this something men can just do, right? Like you're not paying attention to the little things that you just learned over time, or that you are not meaning to offend somebody, but it
You don't
does.
even think about it. It just
Exactly.
happens. And
Uh,
there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just pay attention to the people around you. I mean,
mhm.
if you're making eye contact with a woman at a Target or something and you adjust your balls, I swear she's going to think she is absolutely going to think that it was on purpose and she's going to be so horrified. So
Exactly.
just be aware of surroundings. It's really, and at the end of the day, is that a huge deal? Maybe it's not to them, you know but maybe it is a big deal. So maybe just keep in mind who's around you. It's really, it's hard sometimes because there are all of these big words and concepts surrounding the idea of sexism, misogyny, the patriarchy. There are these big words, and I think
Mhm.
some people get a little bit scared when they hear all those words.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh no, 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 no. This person is crazy. They're trying to cancel me. This person hates men, all that." And to a degree, I understand where that fear comes from because if you don't understand something and somebody starts throwing all of these words at you and starts saying you're wrong about this thing you've never thought of before in your life,
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, I understand that knee jerk reaction to get defensive.
Yes.
And that idea that, like, but I'm not meaning to do anything wrong. So how could you say that I'm doing something wrong? Well, it's in the same way that you deal with any other learned behavior.
Yes.
You have to make yourself aware of it. And then you have to think, okay, is this really the person that I want to be? Do I really want to be the person who makes women uncomfortable with the jokes that I make?
And defend
Or
myself at that.
and then be like, I was just joking. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, it's not a big deal. Um, you could be that person, but is that really what you want to be? Or do you want to be like a decent guy that people like hanging out with?
Exactly.
You know, so there are so many big words, but I really do think at the end of the day, it is just about respecting other people
Mm-hmm.
and trying to not let all of the concepts of those labels interfere with the idea that this is another person that you're talking to. Treat them just like any other person.
Yeah, exactly. One thing that is in the chat right now, Warhead Killer said, "Man can walk around shirts off, and it's been normalized." And at the same token, men can do that, but women can't breastfeed and feel comfortable breastfeeding in public. And there's a huge disparity there, right? And we continue to
Absolutely.
say, "Oh, but it's we're not all bad guys here," and it's like, yeah, but some of the behaviors we normalize in our society actually is kind of bad.
And I don't know what side this person is on, free the nipple or not. Personally, free the nipple because at the end of the day, bodies are bodies. But you can use that is like the perfect double standard to
Yes.
look at.
Mhm.
Men. I can remember even when I was in high school, and my high school had a pretty strict dress code. Boys from the football team could cut the sleeves all the way off their shirts and down the sides,
Mhm.
um, and they could walk around the holes, like, or walk around the halls, and like you could see through the holes in the sides of their shirt. Like you could see their whole chest and stomach, and they just walked around all day like that.
Mhm.
And nobody would say anything. I wasn't allowed to wear like a spaghetti strap tank top
Yeah. And oh,
that covered my whole body.
the worst thing I ever heard a teacher say was, "Oh, you can be distracting the other students like that." And I'm like, they distracted me
What
with
do
they
I
musty ass
care?
arms over there,
Oh,
telling them to put
I
some
actually I
deodorant
had
on.
I had one of the best teachers in high school that I had. One day, he was the one who pointed it out to me because I never had even really thought about it
Yeah.
much until and he was my anthropology teacher. Hi, Mr. Woodward, if you ever see this, I love you. Um he stopped me in the middle of the hall one day and he was like, "There is a guy walking behind you. When
Mhm.
I walk away, turn and look." And I did. And then when I got to his class later that day, he was like, "Did you see him?" And I was like, "Yes." And he was like, because I might have been wearing this shirt or a shirt like it because I wore a lot of those in high school. But I had it like opened in the front and a spaghetti strap underneath.
Uh-huh.
And he was like, "Technically, I was supposed to dress code you right there because I could see the spaghetti straps. But I saw that guy and I thought, why would I do that? Why would I do that to her when this guy is over here walking and I can see both of his nipples?"
Yeah.
Like, and if that doesn't tell you that, there are men who are able to become aware as they get
Mhm.
older, obviously they can.
Yeah.
Um, this was a guy who grew up with brothers and a dad and no sisters, and he still, as a grown adult, is able to talk to his high school, you know, younger girl students in a very respectful way and support them with what
Mhm.
their own ideas and point out disparities, like, "Hey, do you see that they are not treating you well?" And that,
And it's important to do that because it also points to our society as a whole. Men are not just creating these things on their own. There
no.
are companies that are yes, they're predominantly ran by males, but they do all of these surveys and they survey women, and this is what women want, this is what women need. And then you look at those surveys, and majority of the times is women who are of a older generation who come from a different understanding of what our society is and was and has been,
Mhm.
who for the most part, generational wise, has been sheltered from all of these issues generational
Right.
because they were told to just go marry that guy and stay in the house and you're fine. And that's been true
Get
for a
your
lot
Mrs.
of them.
degree and get out.
Exactly, and that's been true for a lot of women.
Mhm.
And they aren't able to recount even when they talk to another man besides the person that they're married with. So they don't understand when we're pointing to these issues. And those are the people that get targeted by by companies, and by
Right.
these people that put out these ideas, these notions of not all men, and they're just trying to get rid of all men. They want to kill all men. And there's a
That always
small
makes me laugh.
faction, a small faction of people that may believe that all men needs to die. That's true.
There are separatists in every group.
Exactly.
I
There's a
mean,
small faction of people that believe there's a spaghetti monster that lives under the earth and keeps us
of
down to
course.
like you.
You know, and I think I don't know. When I see things like kill all men trending, like on
Mhm.
Twitter especially, I'll usually open the hashtag because I love to see what the latest responses are,
Yeah.
because they leave those up there for hours and they stay trending
Mhm.
because the hashtag is then up on the trending list. It
It
continues to
seems
trend for
true.
a long time. Um, but my favorite thing is after I see that it's been up there for a few hours, I open it and I look at the latest tweets, and it is almost always all just men using the hashtag to be like, I can't believe they're doing this again, and like feminists are
Mhm.
taking over. The feminists are taking over, like, and I always think it's so funny because if you scroll down to like all the way through to like the original tweets that made it start trending.
Mhm.
Yes, it is some popular account usually who made a dumb joke that they probably didn't mean, but they said something like kill all men. And then a bunch of like 13-year-old girls hopped on the bandwagon because
Mhm.
it's Twitter, and
And
13-year-old
tabloid.
girls
Yeah.
13-year-old girls and social media have been best friends since social media started. Um and
Kick.
so yes, I mean, I'm not proud of some of the beliefs I had at 13. So I don't
Let's not talk about that.
I mean, no, of course not. I mean, but at the same time, everybody does. You grow,
Uh-huh.
you know? And so when I see them trending and I look and I see the disparity even between the people who are talking,
Yes.
there has to be, I think, especially when you're talking about older adult men, doesn't have to be
Mhm.
like necessarily older, people our age who are men. If you see something like that trending, go ahead and look and see it who is actually saying that.
Exactly.
Because I guarantee you, there's not very many people your age or even older than you that are saying it.
Mhm.
Most of the time, people who say things like that are younger kids on the internet because they just learned what misogyny is and they're fed up with it already. And
Exactly.
I get it, but obviously, I personally don't believe that all men should be killed. Um, but I do understand why a little 13-year-old girl in like Missoula, Montana might say that.
Yes. So just to recap for everyone that's been here, or hasn't been able to follow because you're at work or something, I appreciate you for tuning in. Even if you were here for
Yes,
five
thank you.
seconds or so. Just to recap, we and everyone understands you don't need to try to educate people and tell them that it's not all men. We, as a collective in society, can guarantee it's not always going to be all like an entire group of people committing these
No.
actions, but there is enough men committing the heinous actions to make women feel frightened and scared to live a normal, happy life. And then it is all men who learn in this society different things that are just not comfortable for women. And it is a man's world. That used to be what people say, right? It is a man's world, and we lived in that world for so long that we didn't realize that the little things that we do can be harmful or affect the women around us, like walking around without a shirt on. Just a whole plethora of things that men do, adjusting in front of women, making eye contact with a woman and adjusting, because that is a big issue that people have because you just stare sometimes. Like, these are things that
People
happen.
don't notice, but it happens.
Exactly. And then the marvelous, I love the way that you put it, and I love the way that the person put it. I don't know who said it first, but the whole thing with the M&Ms, right? This is a jar of M&Ms here. If all of the, we're not going to be racist with it, but if all of the blue ones
Right, 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 right. Pick a
right,
blue one. Pick a blue one.
if all of the blue, I almost said the brown one. If all of the blue
Purple,
ones
purple, green, whatever.
are if all of the blue ones were taken, right? Just let's just make it all simple. Let's say that it wasn't a multicolored one. Let's say if it was all blue M&Ms in a jar, but at least 5 of those blue M&Ms were poisoned, and you dug into the jar. You don't know where the 5 are. So life gets a little difficult. Eating these M&Ms become hella difficult. So imagine you're starving, you're on a fucking island, and you have to eat only blue M&Ms. Which ones are you picking, right?
I personally am gonna start looking for some coconuts or something. I'm not taking my chances.
Exactly. And ultimately the wording needs to change, and that's what I'm leading to. How do we kind of fix this? Well, for starters, if you're someone who believes that it's not all men, everyone believes that it's not all men, so you don't have to state that fact.
We get
Another
it. We
thing,
know.
exactly, we know most definitely. Another thing that is important to note is to just reflect, if not on your life, but on the man, like as a man, on the other man in your life. How many times have they said something that just felt uncomfortable when in regards to a woman? Or how many times something was said and you realize, if someone said that about my mom, my sister, my cousin, my brother, or anyone who in your family who identify as a woman and who lives their life as such, how would you react to hearing that if you overheard it? And it's super, super, super important to note that if you are in a area or in a position to where someone is said something that you personally don't believe or feel comfortable with, to call them out on that thing, to
Mhm.
just simply say, yeah, that ain't cool. You don't have to explain it to them, you don't have to educate them. I even do when I'm gaming, and some of you might have called me do it on stream. One of the people that I'm playing with said something that is just like out of left field, randomly as hell, and I'll be like, yeah, that's not cool. And take time to learn yourself, to learn why you say the things that you say, and maybe Quinn have a little bit extra information that she can give on a solution. But the solution is not asking these people what they want you to do, it's learning what you have to do. That's
Yes.
the difference.
Yes, yes, it is. And that's, I think, something that you also echoed in your Black History Month interviews and things like that. Um, the concept of educating yourself versus waiting for somebody to educate you is very important in terms of where you are with allyship.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for misogyny, the patriarchy, everything like that too. Um, Treating your local woman, whether that's your mom or your sister or your girlfriend or just your friend it doesn't matter. Treating them like your psychiatrist, like your therapist, or asking them to explain these things to you in detail. Um, it's it's tiring.
Yes.
You don't always want to be the person who has to break down these concepts for people. There are so many books, there are so many essays, there are movies,
There's the
there are
internet.
everything.
There's
The
internet.
internet, you've got Google. I know you do. If you're on Twitch, you have Google. Just look it up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have questions, I mean, obviously, questions are different. It depends on the relationship you have with that person, of course, but I can guarantee you somebody who sees that you've done a little research on your own is going to be a lot more willing to talk to you than somebody who you've never spoken to before about something like this and just said, explain, the patriarchy.
Exactly. And I would like to say what chat has here.
Oh, yes.
AJ underscore R23, also known as Ava, put. But women don't just get to not eat the M&Ms. They have to participate in society, and
Yes.
it can be triggering. So, for example, let's take it even further, right? So, the green and blue M&Ms are the only thing in the jar. You are starving on an island. There's nothing else around, and the green M&Ms, to be all okay in this society. They're fine, they're good. So you only eat the green ones. And then after a while, you have to wait, save some of the green ones, and then you're gonna have to eat some of the blue ones, right? Because there's nothing else. And the blue ones are still poison. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them are poison. So you have to go and participate with both your green and blue ones in this jar, and you have to
Right.
select very carefully. You can't eat all the green ones. You can't just have all the green ones because you gotta eat something, right? Eventually, those blue ones are gonna come up, and that's how society works. You don't get to just not participate. You don't get to just
Exactly.
not eat or be a part of it. You have
So,
to work through it.
yes. Here's another part that I kind of want to add to that. Why don't I kind of want to ask about, those poisoned M&Ms.
Mhm.
Why are they poisoned? Who poisoned them? What made them do that? And these are, I think, questions that are also kind of ignored when
Mhm.
we talk about these things. And yes, I think it's because, oh, well, it's Women's History Month. We're talking about women. Yes, extremely important. Don't get me wrong. However, if we want to talk about dismantling the patriarchy and all of the bad that it does, you also have to look at the bad that it does for men.
Mhm.
Um, because the patriarchy, in so many ways, I think of things and I think, how do men live with that?
Mhm.
In the same way that I think, how do my friends live with going to parties? I can worry all day and night about, my friends who are women, and queer people. Um, but you can also, look at it from the lens of, these men were once kids just like little girls are kids.
Mhm.
And I think people don't want to see the humanity in the monster when we talk about things like this. But at the end of the day, men who commit, sexual assault, rape, any of those things, they're not, you can't, I always have a problem with classifying them as the term monster because they are just people.
Mhm.
That is a person who made that decision. That is a person who did that. Why did that person think
One
that it was
second.
okay?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. One
No, you're
second.
fine.
Audio just went berserk on me. I am very sorry about that, chat. Technical difficulties. Can you go ahead and say something for me real quick, Quinn? Okay, yeah, the audio just it's on my side for some odd reason. Give me. I'm sorry about that, chat. Please give us 2 seconds here. We'll figure this out. Hi. All right. I was um sorry, chat. Just a couple of more things to work out, and we'll be right back. Hey, all, sorry about that. We were having some technical difficulties with the Zoom, but I believe, Quinn, go ahead and say something.
I think we're back.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah. All right.
we can still be heard at the moment, but your picture isn't showing up for some reason. So I got to figure that out, chat. But for now, we're gonna keep the conversation going as I try to fix it. And she was on a roll, and I feel so bad if you were just joining us again. Right.
There is an aspect of humanity that men are allowed to sort of dodge sometimes when they get called monsters or when women just proclaim that they hate men. Um, and I don't mean to say that it's necessarily. I don't like to judge the ways in which different women cope with it because it is living in this society where, especially in larger areas, even rural areas, what am I even saying? Everywhere, especially in the United States, obviously in other countries too, but I have the most experience with the United States. Women are not safe a lot of the time. They are seen as easy targets still. And so, to be scared and to sort of have that defensive mechanism of I hate men, it makes sense to me. I personally, though, do think that sometimes the way that that narrative is used, in some ways also excuses men from their actions
Mhm.
because men are human beings, just like women are human beings, and, non binary people are human beings. We should be able to hold each other to the same standards. Um, So when I hear people say things like, you know, um, I hate men, I hate them all, I wish they would all die. I understand the thought behind it. I don't think that it is necessarily, I personally do not necessarily think that it is the best way to deal with the problem going forward because it implies that men are just like that. They just are like that, and they are just going to be like that. And that's not, I don't think, is the truth. I think that men are perfectly capable of being held to the same standards as women. I often see, I think the way that this kind of, thought kind of got put together for me was when talking about locker rooms.
Mm.
Um, and, like people were scared because what if a trans woman goes into the women's locker room? Well,
Mhm.
then, parents always get up in arms. They're like, well, he is gonna hit on the girls and, stuff like that. And I mean, obviously, that sentence alone, that little part of the story is just a snapshot of a whole bunch of other complicated problems.
Right.
Um, but I think somebody had some kind of counter to that that was like, well, lesbians are in there all the time and they don't do anything.
Mm.
You don't hear about lesbians raping other women in the locker room. That's an extremely rare thing that has happened not very much in
Mhm.
history, at least in the United States. Um, so why are men not taught to hold themselves to that same standard of respect?
Mm.
Um, and so I think that's where my thoughts on all of this kind of come to a point. I think that if men really want to be an ally, truly, and they really want to make the world a better place and a safer place for women and for trans people and, for anybody who isn't a cis man,
Yeah.
they should look at themselves and say, do I treat every person, regardless of gender, like a person?
Mhm.
Do I treat them like I would treat my friend? Do I treat them like another human being? Because I think as long as I mean, if you're doing that, you're already in a pretty good place. If you are already thinking of women and other people as people, you're off to a pretty good start. It's when things become so dichotomized and you have men and you have women, and that whole biological dichotomy of, well, men are strong and men need to have certain fulfilled needs, um and what women don't.
Right.
um and I think once you get really into that kind of part of discussion, it becomes very easy to start spinning things and just start blah blah blah. And it makes sense that women are this. Yes.
Sorry, I lost audio for a split second there. I'm
Okay. No, you're fine.
sorry,
You're
Jack.
fine. You're fine. You're fine. I got so scared. I was like, what? No, it's fine. But I think if you just genuinely look at these things like, do I treat people like people?
Mhm.
You already kind of have a pretty decent sense of what you should be doing or how you should be talking to people. You know, it doesn't have to be complicated if you don't want it to be. The idea of, theory and academics and all of this that comes into any issue like this is important to, quote unquote higher understanding. I get it. I understand that. But at the same time, you can just listen to people who are around you. You can just look at the life that you're living and the lives of people around you, and you can see problems. If you want to help them.
Mhm.
Do what the actual right thing is. If you see a friend of yours bragging about how he did X to his girlfriend when she was half asleep, tell him that's fucked up, dude, and you shouldn't do that.
Mhm.
I mean, that is treating that person that you just heard about with respect.
Yes.
If you see a woman who is clearly uncomfortable, if you see her in a position where she is trying to get away from somebody and somebody is being relentless, you can see this anywhere at any time of day in any major city or even small cities. It doesn't matter. You can see this happening.
Mhm.
If someone is uncomfortable, just say, "Oh, hey, there you are."
Mhm.
Just get them out of that situation. Watch them. Make sure that if you see somebody walking to their car at night, maybe don't go up to them because that might scare them. There is a line,
Yes.
right? Like between being, helpfully conscious of what other people are doing and like
Overly,
watching
yeah,
them, like
yeah.
watching them. Don't watch them. But like if you see somebody by themselves, take a second glance sometimes. Make sure that they're getting to their car okay. If
Yeah.
you see somebody, stalking up behind them, go ahead and draw some attention to yourself and make sure that that guy goes away.
Th-
There are so many things that just happen in everyday life that if you
mhm.
are being conscious of that, of what's going on around you, and you are, familiar with the ways that women struggle just by hearing, somebody else talk about it, hear something that happened to my sister and now I see it and I go, I'm going to help stop that because I know that that affects people.
Yeah.
Then great, you've done something. Good
Yes.
job. That is that is really all that you can be asked of in this lifetime where things are so complicated.
Mhm.
If you are doing things to make the people's lives around you a little bit better, I think you're doing great.
Yes. I would like to add like 100% on just everything you said there. And one thing that I like to push to people, and I like to mention, is if a person is talking about something that is super obviously personal, and they're having that conversation openly in front of you, one, you are a participant in that conversation, and you have the right to say something. Two, which I find very important, when you see someone acting in a certain way towards another individual, doesn't matter who they are, but especially a woman trying to make advances that she's shooting down, just be obvious and blatant with it. Like that's what I that's the note that I've always been on. If you can safely do it, just be obvious. Like, oh, so sir, you just gonna walk up on her? Or just make it obvious. And
Yeah,
people,
if you
if they're meant to be with each other, they will say, oh, I'm with her. Like, and she would
yes.
agree. If they're not meant to be, she'll be like, what the fuck, and let you know, thank
Yes.
you, or I appreciate that. You don't have to make it obvious on the behalf of her, like, get away from her or leave her alone. No, just say, hey sir, you're walking a little too close, and it would catch them off guard, and it would cause everyone else to notice, like, hey, what was going on over there? Watch that dude. I
I
would say.
want every older lady who has ever done something like that for me. I hope that they have the best lives ever. Every person who has ever done something like that, where instead of putting the focus on me, they have turned the focus onto the person making me uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
and kind of pointed it out to them like, hey, you're being a dick. Like,
Exactly.
that is probably the best way to handle that situation because one, it definitely takes the eyes and the situation, the focus off of the person who is overwhelmed,
Yes.
right? That gives an easy backdoor exit if that's what they need. If they seriously just need to get out of there, you have just given them an opportunity to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other hand, you're not putting her on the spot. You're not putting this person on the spot.
Exactly.
You are putting the person who is doing something wrong on the spot. And that's a little bit more just, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You've made them look at themselves.
Maybe some other men in the chat can contest to this. But we all have like that Superman fantasy where we swoop in and we're like, "Hey, get away from her," and we
You can live that out.
and
You can do it.
you can
Just
live it
do
out.
it.
But just don't be so dramatic about it to where you're putting everything on her and making the situation way more complicated, way more harder to cope with or to fathom onto her. Just do it in a way that just makes sense. Call him out. Call him out very specifically. Like, hey sir in the red hat, you walking a little too fast. Like let's be very precise in your wording and how you're talking to them. And ultimately, if you're wrong, if they're meant to be with each other, if they're reacting that way because they're whatever to each other, then okay, so what? So what? It's not gonna hurt you.
They it's
Like,
not. I guarantee you if a couple is playfully fighting together and you misread that, they're going to tell you, they are both going to tell you it's okay.
uh huh.
I guarantee you they are not going it is not going to be like you don't even know us. Like very rarely are you going to get somebody who's going to do that. They're usually just going to be like, "Oh no, it's fine. It's fine." Because at the end of the day, people are I think generally fairly nice about things like
Exactly.
that, especially if they know that like you're just trying to make sure that everything's cool. They're not going to care and they're not going to remember in 20 minutes when they go back to their conversation.
No.
It doesn't matter. But you may really help somebody.
And save a life. Here in the chat, Ava says, also just pay attention to how close you are to people around you and what you are doing. Like, if you are behind a woman and she has her keys in her hand, in her she has her keys in a defensive position. Maybe stop and tie your shoe or check your phone really quickly
Back it up.
and back it
Back
up.
it up.
As someone who walked fast, I can contest to this. Sometimes though, I'm not gonna lie, get the fuck out of my way. Like, I got a destination. I'm trying to get there. Like, I understand, but like, I got more important shit to be doing right now. Move. All right, sometimes, but most of the time, it's on me. Like, if you walk side by side me before, I can walk fast as fuck, and I don't really care. Like, I'm just walking fast. I'm getting to my destination.
You just go where you
I
got to
am
go.
also mindful of the people around me. If there's someone in front of me who is looking over their shoulder constantly, who is nervous, who is worried, especially as a black male, I get this shit all the time. I don't take it as them being disrespectful to me, oh, just because I'm black. No, I don't take them as being disrespectful to me just because I'm a guy. I take it as someone who is cautious of their surroundings and being as safe as possible. And it is on you sometimes, as the person making people feel unsafe, to regain that confidence for that person, to help them regain that trust. Be like Ava said, be mindful of what they're doing. If they're fidgeting in their bag a lot, trying to grab their mace, if they holding their mace, be mindful of it and say, hey, I shouldn't be causing you to have to do that. Let me just get the fuck
Right.
up out of here. And sometimes it'll look weird. It look like you suspicious and you are committing some type of action. And that's where it gets a little iffy for me, especially being a black male, especially all of the stories that we have, the Central Park Five, Emmett Till, just so many black and brown people are affected by just simply existing. So this is a lot
Right.
harder to cope with, to produce, and to make and to make it feel more natural for a lot of males out there because and trust me, like I said, I had it happen to me a lot where people are always just constantly looking over their shoulder, even in daylight, broad daylight, and they're just looking over their shoulder trying to see where I'm at, trying to figure out where I'm going, what I'm doing, what I'm up to. I have a backpack on, for God's sakes. Like what like like
What's in that bag?
I'm wearing my school uniform and everything. So I understand that there sometimes the people in front of you are making you feel unsafe. And I also understand being called, like law enforcement being called for no apparent reason, and you being there's a suspicious guy walking around my neighborhood. There's a suspicious, sorry, I can't even talk English. And I understand that. So this one is a little bit harder to produce. I get that.
Can I add to that though?
Yeah, of course.
Because I personally, I would like to point out that that whole situation that you described is also a flaw of the patriarchy.
Mm.
That is something that was created by white men to keep black men
Yeah.
from being able to integrate into white society.
Yes.
That is absolutely something that the patriarchy also did. They decided, you know, and obviously it doesn't happen in a way that, like, a bunch of old men got in a room and said, ho ho ho, guess what we're gonna do. That's not how these things come up, but at the same time, you can see the way that it's been used in the past, and you can see there is a pattern of white man thinks black men are causing some trouble.
Mhm.
I am going to pin too much masculinity to be the issue,
Yep.
and that is going, and so when you say, I think that that is something that women, especially white women, need to check themselves on.
Mhm.
um Fairly, am I nervous about this person because I am a woman alone and they are a
Mhm.
man, or am I nervous because I have some racial biases? It is important to be thinking of all of those possibilities. And sometimes your instinct is right.
Exactly.
Sometimes it
Yeah.
doesn't matter who they are. If they're creepy, they're creepy and they
Mhm.
will it, it's just a bad feeling, get out of
Yeah.
there. But sometimes your intuition is wrong. Well,
I, like
sometimes the assumptions that you make as being intuition are
yes.
not. Sometimes your biases creep into your intuition.
Uh
And
huh.
so it's important to be conscious of them.
As someone,
Because,
I'm sorry.
oh, yeah. Well, I was just going to say, because if you are walking and you've got mace in your hand and then the person behind you stops and ties their shoe and you keep going, oh, they weren't a threat to me. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
kind of what you were saying.
Mhm.
Yes, there is that way of that give and take that kind of alleviates that issue, I
Yes.
guess. Um, and while it's not great, it is a solution for now
Mhm.
until, we get to a point where we can start having even larger conversations, because I think right now things are so fragmented and
Yes.
seen in such little windows. People are still kind of having a hard time seeing the way that they intersect all the
Uh
time,
huh.
because everything intersects. But, some people are not quite ready to have those sides of the discussions, right?
Exactly.
So it is important to also just, like, what can I do on a day-to-day basis, right? Um, so I would say in both cases, both parties, just be cautious of the people around you.
Yeah.
Um,
You know,
just watch.
one of the things that I've seen happen a lot, especially so a lot of times if I'm in like I've been followed a lot of times by a lot of suspicious random ass individuals, and it's like, yo, what the fuck
Mhm.
are they doing? And it also been followed by like gang members and all these type of individuals because where I grew up at and where I like to go visit, like when I would go visit like the beaches and stuff like that, and walking through those communities there would be some random person that's sitting on their port or their patio and then walks all the way out to watch where I walk to, like I'm gonna rob them. Like I walked past your dumbass. If I would have robbed you, I would have did it right there. But
I would have done it.
exactly. But the point there is I understand how it feels to just be followed and have something to protect yourself and wanting to have that thing even
Right.
closer or further out to protect yourself when the time comes for it and the necessity for it is there. But one thing that I also learned is that doesn't really look good on me. So as a male, right? I that doesn't look good on me to walk around with this thing to protect myself because it makes it look even worse like I'm going to do something. So
Right.
you have to find other alternatives, unfortunately, until like Quinn said, until we can have a bigger discussion. It's important for everyone in that situation to be more mindful and noticeable. One of the things that I used to see people do, like I said, was just announce themselves. Just announce, like, yeah, I'm here. I'm not gonna do anything. And people get more nervous with that sometimes, and some people are like, ah, shit, I thought you were gonna do something. I'm not gonna lie. I thought, like, and then it becomes a thing. So it really depends. And like Ava says in the chat, like if you're trying to get past someone, say on your left, say excuse me, make yourself known. Like yes, I do that all the time when I'm walking. I'm all right, excuse me, on your left, I'm gonna pass you real quick. All of that good stuff, as respectful as I can. I make sure to keep my hands close to my side or in my pocket, so
Mhm.
I don't want none of that bullshit of oh he just touched me, they just touched me, whatever the
Mhm.
situation may be. They took my wallet, some bullshit. Like no, like I keep my hands in my pocket. I'm mindful of where my body is when I'm doing these things, and I'm also mindful of how to make myself look less of a threat. So I have to learn this walking around gang members, right? Gang members is gonna bully any and everybody that they see. But if you make
Right.
yourself seem even less of a threat, then people are gonna be like, "Oh, okay, never mind. Let me leave that guy alone." And it's true, and it's unfortunate, but it's true. People who are wearing button ups, people who are wearing suits, are going to be able to walk closer and faster to people than anyone else. Like they can be
Right.
as rude as possible, but people are gonna apologize to them, and it's been proven a couple of times by a couple of different studies.
College campuses everywhere
Everywhere.
will prove that.
Exactly, and it's like not saying that that's okay, not saying that you need to dress a certain way to get around in society or etc. But it's something to be mindful of. Like if you're wearing jogging clothes and you're catching speed onto somebody, you don't have to stop jogging because you're wearing jogging clothes. But if you're jogging and you're in your regular everyday clothes and you're catching speed on somebody, maybe just maybe you're
I'm
not wearing the right
jogging.
you're not wearing the right attire for the situation at hand, and maybe you should stop. And it's
Maybe
those
it's
kind of
time.
things. Exactly. And trust me, as someone who life is always in danger in this society, I know how to be mindful of my safety, the safety of others around me, and still live a comfortable life without feeling like it's a burden on me, without feeling like I am not allowed to just exist. Because I throw my headphones on and I give a fuck about a day. Like I would, and I have, and I do. So that's important to know. You don't have to change everything, and there's always going to be that situation that's just I think it's called like a catch 20 or something like that.
A catch 22.
Catch
Nobody
22,
wins.
exactly, where no one wins, and there always is going to be that situation, especially when it
Right.
comes to our society. So
Right.
that's that ultimately.
It
uh
is. It is. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, i I think it does come down to those larger conversations that still need to happen.
yep.
Um, because it, they are complex because
Hmm.
things are so interwoven. But I think that if you are looking for a better reason to sort of why do I care? You have a common enemy in the patriarchy. You have a common enemy in being told how to live your life in a way
Hmm.
that you don't necessarily want to. Um,
Yeah.
and and this goes for both sides that I think we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
black men, darker skinned men in general, and women who are walking at night.
Yeah.
Really think about your motivations in what you are doing to make yourself feel more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is the easiest solution for now. It should not be the only solution. Hopefully, in the future, we will see better solutions, and bigger conversations happening where some of these problems are, first of all, recognized by larger amounts of people
Mm-hmm.
and able to be more openly talked about. But for now, I do think that just being mindful and being respectful and trying to understand the situation of others is the best way to sort of proceed.
Yeah. And Warhead Killer said in the chat here, he said that that's why I hate going to concerts. I don't know where to put my hands. Everyone is just pushing on you. And someone responded
Up,
back to
man.
that. Ava responded back to that saying, I think in situations like that, women are pretty tend to be pretty understanding of
Right.
accidental things happening. And usually, you can just
Ju-
apologize and call it that.
yeah, and I would just, as a frame of reference, this is something kind of misogynistic that my dad used to tell me when I was a kid, but like if I translate it to here, I think it makes sense.
Mm,
If you try and keep your hands sort of what did he always say, above the hip and below the elbow
mm.
of the person that you are with, that is, I think, a good sort of measure if you're in a crowded situation. If you keep your hands kind of at waist level or slightly above, you aren't going to touch anything that is going to make somebody extremely mad at you. You
Mm-hmm.
might bump into somebody's back or their arm, but you aren't going to like grab them on accident in a way that's going to make them really uncomfortable.
Oh, okay. I like that. I like that.
That's my little tip to you. And I am a shorter person, so this doesn't matter for me because everyone's hands are at my shoulder level anyway. But if you are in a large group, and you are genuinely concerned with like not touching somebody,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want to make them uncomfortable, just kind of put your hands at a level that isn't going to touch something important, something that isn't going to make them like physically disgusted with what's just happened. Like if you
Yeah.
touch their back, if you touch their arms on accident, I guarantee you they're not going to care that much. But if you grab their ass on accident, they're going to be a little bit upset.
Yeah, they're gonna be ready to catch them hands, all right?
They are. They
And you're
yes,
gonna be ready to catch that
especially
case. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know how
that's
you
right.
accidentally touch somebody's butt, but I, has that ever
Hey,
happened to me? No, I'm tall
I
though.
I
Well,
I will just say, as a way to debunk that, I highly doubt that it has happened on accident as many times as I think
yes,
people have claimed
it
that it
happened on
happened on
accident.
accident. So if you are genuinely afraid of a real accident, that is how you can
Yeah,
avoid it.
the odds of you accidentally, like, you have to be close as fuck in order for that.
Yeah.
You
And
have to
your
be like
hand
right.
has to line up with it perfectly.
Uh
Like,
huh.
there's a lot of factors.
There's just too much that goes into play there. I think it's like one of those things that it's not a myth, but when it does happen on accident, like it just,
Nobody believes it.
yeah,
Nobody can
no,
believe that. No one's
yeah.
going to buy it. So you just have to live with the truth for yourself.
So one of the other topics that I wanted to talk about today was just when it comes to women in media, right? So a lot of times, this is where things get interesting. A lot of men use this. Not a lot of men. Let me phrase this wording correctly. Not all men, but I'm joking.
Not all men, but
No, but a lot of misogynistic men or whatever use certain women in our society who are in media to portray, oh, see, she gets it, they understand it, and
oh, the
I just want
pick
to
me
know
girl.
I want to know how do women combat the pick me girl, because we combated the Sambos, some of y'all might
Right.
know them as the Uncle Toms. That's not the real phrasing for it. It's actually called Sambo. So we learn how to pick
Right.
out these individuals in the black community, in the black society. How do people who are allies and people who are women point like and pick out the pick me girls? Like, how do you do that?
Okay. Some tips for figuring out if the main character is a pick me girl. Uh, does she have other female friends?
Mm.
Does she talk to them in this piece of media and not about a man? This is something called the Bechdel test. This is the barest minimum. Okay. So the barest minimum is called the Bechdel test,
Mm-hmm.
which there's a website and you can see if movies and whatever pass the Bechdel test. And it was created by Alison Bechdel, who's a lesbian cartoonist, and she created it as satire, but it has now become used as a genuine tool to measure inclusivity in movies. Um, and the only requirements for the Bechdel test is there has to be more than one woman.
Mm-hmm.
They have to have a conversation with each other, and that conversation has to be about something that's not a man.
Okay.
This is okay, that is the barest minimum because I think that just gives a perspective of where media was in the 80s.
Yeah.
And now things have definitely changed.
Yes.
Um, women's led stories are much more common.
Mm-hmm.
Stories about women doing lots of different things are a lot more common, and that's all great. But a lot of these movies still have the main characters portraying harmful stereotypes, fulfilling these roles that women have been trying to combat, trying to, I think, so I would say the pick me girl is very obvious to spot.
Yes.
Because the pick me girls in movies and TV and whatever are often younger.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're often, look at like young adult media, high school, high school shows, college shows, things like that. There's generally speaking a pick me girl in there. And that is going to be the character that in general kind of seems the easiest to kind of brush off the things that happen to her.
Okay.
She picks herself up quickly. She doesn't, seem to have any in-depth emotional reactions to things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she just kind of goes along with the story at the pace of whatever man is setting it. These are sidekicks. This is every wife in a drama movie.
Yeah.
Um, a woman who has no real aspirations for herself except for to be the right hand of whatever the main character is doing.
Okay. So, I I I heard about this test a couple of times from you, and I'm also like I call myself a big movie buff. I don't know shit about movies, um, and I watch a lot of like YouTube channels that break down movies, talk about like the little ins and outs of them, and most, if not all, of those channels admit, for the most part, or not admit, they don't admit because they didn't create it, but say that this test is not only very flawed, but it really, like, some of her own pieces of literature don't pass, and
Yes.
there's like a lot of like backlash in the movie community about this, right? And
About yes, because the Bechdel test, it was created as a joke.
okay.
It wasn't it's a comic. It actually comes from a comic because she was a cartoonist,
Hmm.
Alison Bechdel. And it was supposed to be a joke about how there are no movies about lesbians.
Okay.
Because there are no movies that have any of those three things, which would be required for a movie to be focused on lesbians, right?
Hmm.
You have to have more than one female character. They have to be able to talk to each other and they have to talk about something that's not a man. She used those three things in her cartoon to kind of show like it is not even possible at this time to assume that the characters we are seeing on screen could be representative of us because their lives entirely revolve around the men on screen.
I don't want to sound stupid. I'm not trying to sound stupid, but wouldn't Scooby Doo pass?
Scooby Doo absolutely passes the Bechdel test, and that's why
Yeah.
Scooby Doo is great. Scooby
Okay.
Doo does pass the Bechdel test.
Baggy. Whoa. Wait a
Yeah, that got
minute.
real messed up, didn't it? No. Velma and Daphne have plenty of conversations that are not about the other guys. They are just about what's happening around them. It passes.
Okay.
It's super easy to pass the Bechdel test,
Okay.
and yet
So
so
many
many movies
movies.
still don't.
Woo.
Because because I think society has now embraced, I think, after the kind of girl power movement of Y2K onward, we definitely saw more movies focused on women's success.
Yes.
Um, but are those good movies? Not
No.
always.
And most of the
Sometimes they
time,
kind of suck.
and I can be 100% wrong on this, but most of the time they're like comedy romance movies that suck, and the woman is always overworking herself, always super headstrong, and like can't have a personality, don't have no real life outside of
Mhm.
work. Then she finds this guy that wakes her up and teaches her how to be happy about life. They get
God,
married, they
yes.
have a dog. The end, Marty and me. I'm joking.
No, really. And the actual the example I was going to use was The Devil Wears Prada, which was seen as such an empowering girl boss movie, but a lot of the movie actually revolves around competition among women and how they tear each other down.
Mm-hmm.
It There was this big push to have women in media, but then a lot of male directors who were the ones who made these movies were like, let's not give them too many ideas though. And I just think that there is a problem with the way that a lot of male writers write women.
Yeah.
They don't do it well. They
Mm-hmm.
don't always treat them as if they are characters. They treat them as a feminine archetype. And there are lots of different feminine archetypes. And I think that it's fine to use archetypes in writing, um, because it helps to move the story along. It helps to kind of foreshadow things for the reader or watcher, entertainment, whatever. It doesn't matter. There are ways to do it without making that archetype be the character's only motivations and personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is not something that we get to see a whole lot of in movies until recently. There are a few movies that have come out in the last few years that I've been pleasantly surprised by, and I've been like, wow, that feels like I watched a woman on screen and not a character that could be replaced with anybody else.
Yeah.
They're It's like they write a lot of the times it feels like male writers can only write a person and a woman. They write men like they would a person, and they write women like they would write women.
Mm.
And I think that's where the major problem is. And I don't think it's always conscious. I think a lot of writers don't realize that that's what they're doing with their female characters. I could point out a billion TV shows that do this all the time, and it doesn't seem like they're even aware of it. Where if the character is a male lead, they just use all of the female characters that come in and out of the show as sort of plot points.
Yeah.
They don't create them to be characters on their own.
Yeah.
They are there simply for the plot.
A show that I know very well that I can contest that to is when you first watch the first couple of seasons of Lucifer before they got their new writers and their new producers.
Mhm.
You watch
That's what I heard.
season 1 of Lucifer and you're like, these are some one-dimensional ass like people here. They try to make the detective this badass woman, but it turns out what? She's that same shit in those comedy romance
Right.
movies.
She wakes up and suddenly it's like the sun is out and she's happy to be married to a man and live in their little house and take care
Exactly.
of things.
But in later seasons of Lucifer, all of these characters, like Massa King, she starts to become her own person, live her own
Mhm.
rules. And like she was meant to be that one dimensional person in the beginning because she was his like not prodigy, but demon in hell or something like that. It's weird.
Mhm.
But she really comes out to her own. The detective really come out to their own. And they start to actually be real people. Like you see them and you're like, oh, okay, I can see somebody actually making that mistake, actually doing that, and etc. for those reasons. And I felt that that was an important show that did really good at that. Oh, did we lose Quinn here? Did we freeze?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yes. See, that's did you lose me? Okay.
You're back.
No? Okay. I heard all that, so I'm good. I'm good.
Cool.
Um yes, I think that just recently there's been a bigger push to have actual female characters and not just one-dimensional plot points that they slap a feminine name on.
hmm
Um And I also think that after Me Too, I think we are now seeing a lot more female writers and directors getting a slice of the pie in
Yes.
Hollywood and places like that. And I think that's great, although there are loads of other ethical concerns that come up. Um,
Yeah.
but I do think that, in terms of a girl power thing, sure, great, I'm glad. I am happy to see real people being on screen again
Mm-hmm.
and not just one dimensional characters that are being placed in situations to help develop a male character. Um, I would say if you, yeah, I'll make a recommendation. If you want to see a well written female character bouncing off of a very strong male character in a very new medium or media, Malcolm and Marie with Zendaya and oh God, what's his first name? Washington is his last name. Denzel Washington's son.
I think
Um,
isn't he a junior or am I tripping? I don't know these.
yes, he's no, no, no,
No,
no.
no, he's not.
I don't know. If you haven't seen it and you would like to watch 2 hours of people arguing, go for it. If you saw A Marriage Story and enjoyed it, this is better
Mm,
because A Marriage Story is just white people yelling at each other. This has whole other layers to it, so I highly recommend.
that's
Um,
cool.
and and I do really think that if you, I think I like that movie so much because Zendaya's character was written to be a person,
Hmm.
um, and the character does kind of struggle with being thought of by her partner as his female sidekick in
Mm,
some ways. And how he is not recognizing what she has actually brought to him. And she is given, a full backstory, a full life,
mm,
full opinions of her own that she shares on screen in order to fight this dude who, thinks that he made her in some
yeah,
ways. So I highly recommend watching that if you want to see
that
a
sounds
very
good.
strongly written female character and a very strongly written male character, honestly. It is long and it is essentially just 2 hours of dialogue between the two of them because there's nobody else in the movie. I just smacked my mic. But it's really good. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. I remember the controversy behind that, and how young
There,
he is. I mean, how young she is and how old he is. All of this bullshit. Don't worry about that. There's been way too many mediums, like the Wolf of Wall Street. Anybody questioned that? No, because she showed her little
no. It,
thingy thing. So, people,
I mean, also, I think you could very clearly point to racism in that argument. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
yes, most
nobody
definitely.
gave a shit when it was Leonardo DiCaprio,
Right.
but
The poster boy for all of this shit. Anyway.
and also right, and also she's an adult woman.
Hmm.
It is not promoting. She does not play a teenager in this like she does in Euphoria. She plays a grown ass woman, and he plays a
Exactly.
grown ass man, and it's not. It might be. I mean, there are definitely
We lost you for a second. It's breaking up.
that their age
Sorry, we're having technical difficulties. I can't say that word today. Yeah, we lost you for a second, but we're gonna bring you back, and
I can. Are we good? Okay,
I think we're good. I'm not sure.
I'm back. Is that cool?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna assume we are, and I'm going to say, um, they talk about the age gap, and I think it's handled well,
Hmm.
um, because it isn't necessarily portrayed to be a good thing,
Yeah.
but it is called out for what it is, and I think it's important to the story. I think they did that on purpose, so
Yeah.
I like it. I genuinely, because it is a story about the way that women are taken for granted a lot of the time,
Yeah.
and their
And
youth is kind of the only thing that they are seen as being good for. So, highly recommend that for strong female characters. Um, Man, I need more movies about old women, though. That's the other thing that I want to talk about with this.
Golden Girls, fucking movie.
While we're
Watch the
on the
show.
topic of women's empowerment. Oh, that's
Watch
true. Golden
Golden
Girls,
Girls. It
classic.
is not only a classic, but it handles
Just
a
watch Golden
lot of the
Girls.
topics that most of y'all won't be able to
It
fathom.
does.
It handled them so well, in my personal opinion. I thought that show was very, very good, and I watched it when I was
I
young. So watching it now, man, that show
I
is a
always love Golden
masterpiece.
Girls.
Betty White is the shit.
Yes. And it yes, she is. But I do think that that shows like that are not super common anymore
Mm,
because we have kind of fallen back even farther on the idea that women's youth are the only thing that they're good for.
mm.
Um, you don't see
Well,
Golden Girls now. Once you see once a woman, there's like a there's a saying in performing. You
yeah.
know, once if you're a woman, when you hit 50, that's it.
Mm,
They don't want you anymore. Um, and unfortunately, that's the case for a lot of aging actresses.
yeah.
Um, People who got roles because they were pretty when they were young, when they get old, they get tossed aside.
Hmm.
And it doesn't have anything to do with the talent that they bring. It
Yeah.
has all to do with the way that they're going to sell and who they're going to sell to. Um, Older women get to experience something that um, young women have a hard time fathoming, I
Hmm.
think, which is the concept of losing the male gaze.
Mm,
Um, Young women, from the time that they are born, pretty much, from the time that somebody is assigned female at birth, they are being looked at through the male gaze.
mm.
They are being looked at as what they are going to provide for the men in their life. And this is like a whole phenomenon about Western society and the way that women are treated. But the concept of the male gaze follows, young people who are assigned female at birth from the moment they are old enough to recognize that men see them as useful for something until they get to be old and men stop looking at them completely.
Mhm.
And a lot of older women now, where older women are given more opportunities to do things, because if you think about it, when women were housewives, when you got old, you just stayed home.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, women can work well into their older years. They
Mhm.
can have, there are different social groups for like seniors and things like that that didn't exist before necessarily. But they are now talking about how different life becomes when men do not look at you for a second time anymore.
Mm.
Um, because when you're growing up as somebody who is assigned female at birth, you are so often being looked at and you see yourself through the lens of what men are seeing you as. Just because that is the way that we're conditioned, that's the way that we're raised,
Mm.
that is the predominant way that people assigned female at birth are raised in the United States. Um, but when you get older, you don't have that anymore because men no longer see you as useful. And it comes with other problems, but for the first time, they are able to see like what does it feel like to authentically just be myself and not see myself through their lens.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's really interesting. And I think that's another, part of this that, you know, older women do not lose value because they aren't beautiful anymore.
Yeah, they offer value to our society, but is this a thing about older women, or is this a thing about our society and always telling us that the older people are, the less likely they are to be valuable to our society? So therefore, forget about them, right? Is it, or is it like everything, like you said earlier, and it's a combination of all things? But
Right.
is that the driving force of this? That our society has always worked in a way that the older you are, the least valuable you are, unless you're in the medium of educating or being in politics. Other than that, you
That's
have
true.
no value to us.
That's a great point. And I do think that ageism in general is definitely in that, but I
Mhm.
think that there is a special kind of ageism when you're talking about women and their sexual desirability going down because so much value is placed on women's sexual desirability their entire lives. When they lose that, there is, I think, a whole second phenomenon of what does it feel like to live without that.
Mm, okay. and that's something that would be lovely to see displayed on screen because I love the Golden Girls, and I used to watch Girls when I was like 12. So I was
Right.
watching when I was 12 to all the way to like 15, 16, and then we stopped. Cable stopped being a thing. I mean, cable started to be a thing, and you couldn't just watch TV anymore. You had to cut on
Right.
cable.
You had to get
So
cable and yeah.
yeah, so I didn't get to watch Golden Girls after that. I started watching my cartoons again. Um,
Right.
but I really
Equally important as the
equally
Golden
important.
Girls.
um, and it's important to also note that there's other mediums out there, other mediums of media out there, such as our news, our cable networks, and how bad cable networks, especially some of the women on some of these cable networks, on how they are and like being empowered to be confident and reporting on a lot of these other women. Let's take for instance how they did Hillary Clinton when she was running for presidency, how they did Kamala Harris when she was running for presidency. Everyone tends to point out like, oh, all of these men were saying she's for Hillary, she's a nagging wife. She's a nagging wife. One of the
Oh,
people
the
that
nagging
coined
wife.
that first in that medium was that Fox News reporter, whatever her name is. She did it first.
Yes.
She said Hillary
There
sounds like a nagging wife almost, doesn't she? Like, and I was like, what? Why would you do that?
the way that news media tears down women constantly
Constantly.
is so disheartening. Um I mean, obviously it's well, maybe not obviously. I do think that sometimes though in conservative news media you're going to see it more, but you're going to see it everywhere
Everywhere. Mm-hmm.
because people hate old women and old nobody hates old women more than other old women.
Yes.
They the way that women are pit against each other their entire lives becomes tiring, but it also becomes so ingrained.
Mm-hmm.
And so unlearning that, and this goes back to the pick me girl concept too.
Yeah.
Um, unlearning that because you are different does not make someone of lesser value to you
Mm-hmm.
is something that I don't think is consciously applied to women and other women a lot of the times because a lot of the times other women are being you're being told that they are competition in some ways.
Yeah.
In some way or another, they're your competition. You are trying to fight against them. And of course, things have started to change, and that's great. And I see a lot more of the, women uplifting other women, women, using platforms to hear the voices of other women. My favorite is Ava DuVernay and the way that she does movies and the way that
Mm-hmm.
she is bringing the lens of women to cinematography. Um, but in general, the way that the places that I see that least of anywhere is in the news.
Yes.
I feel like no matter what a woman does on the news, there is going to be some old wrinkly man who wants to say that she belongs back in her home.
Yeah. Or there's going to be their colleague sitting right next to them feeling the need to add their input. Now, there's a difference
Yes.
between wanting to add to a piece of information that someone just put out there and doing so once they give you the space to talk, or once you respectfully say, "Hey, can I add something here?" But in
Mhm.
news, they made that so bad. Like women would be sitting here talking, explaining things, breaking it down, analysis. Like no matter what they're doing, their newswomen colleagues would be breaking things down, and then you'll see these men say, just jump in and be like, yeah, yeah, and then keep talking and over
When
them,
he
and it's like,
cuts,
what?
he just says cut off.
Yep.
I see that on the news. So anytime that I watch a news clip from
Mhm.
TV, I'm like, I almost feel like I should start timing women when they talk and like time how long it takes before a man cuts them off because it happens every single time, especially when they have those like teleconference debates on CNN or something.
Yes.
A woman starts saying anything of value, and a man is like, well, hold on just a minute. Let me just, and it's like, dude,
Wh-
you
wh-
already
Give me one
spoke.
second here. And it's never just a minute. It's never just
It
a
is.
fucking minute.
He's like, I'll let you get back to this point, but and it's like, no,
No.
you won't.
Exactly.
Um, and I really appreciate it when who was it? I think it was one of the moderators at the debates during the presidential debates when
Yes.
she was like, "I am asking this question, let me finish," or something. Whoever said something like, "I am
Yeah.
still speaking," like that is the way that I started handling that.
That was
That is the
the vice presidential debate. Kamala Harris did it to Mike Pence twice, and he kept trying to
yes.
talk, and she was like, "This was a question for me. I'm talking. I'm
Yes.
speaking." And the media,
I
how they
I
portrayed
am
that was so
speaking.
bad.
That is what she said. I am speaking.
hmm The way you're supposed to do it, the way I would do it if somebody's cutting me off in the middle of a debate. This is my turn to talk. I am speaking. Like, you don't get to just talk. That's not how a fucking debate works. That's not how
No.
it ever was supposed to work. Our
No.
Yes. Ava said, are hijacking the point as their own and making it their own. 100%.
Making it their own point. And as I was saying, no, you weren't saying because she was saying, and then you decided that that your point was more important than hers, and so you
Exactly.
made that point instead. It is extremely frustrating with that. That I see a lot in academic circles,
hmm
especially. Um,
A
walk
classroom
onto
is
a
good
college
as, yeah.
walk into a college classroom and have them get into small groups to discuss, and there will be a guy who raises his hand probably like this, and then he's going to say, well, our group was talking about this, and he's going to say word for word what some girl in his group just
Just
said,
said.
and she's going to sit there looking at him like, oh yeah, is that what we discussed?
I
Did we talk about
I
that, or
would
did
say
I talk about it?
I would say that has happened in the group that I've been in, and I raised my hand, and I felt so bad because I didn't do that. What I did instead was tell her, like, "Hey, so your point that you made," and and it threw her off, and she got embarrassed. It was just a bad formula. I could
Oh,
have done it better. I could have done it better. But what I tend to do when I'm in groups, is just say, this person here, or as this person said, and you've been in groups with me before when we were doing our
I
RA
have,
training.
yes.
Like, this just is just normal for me. It's not even
It
just
is.
when it's a woman. It's when anyone in your group made a valid point that you are going to speak on, and make a
Name who
point
said
up.
it.
Name who said it. Just simply say, "Oh yeah, this person over here in my group said this." Like, if you did as a group come up with that idea, or you all were on that same wavelength, then it's okay to say, "Okay, my group," and that's fair.
Yes.
You're representing everyone because you
You
all were
all
on that
you all
same.
had that discussion. This is the conclusion that you as a group collectively came to. That is
Exactly.
different than one person talked for 5 minutes while everybody else sat there and listened, and then somebody else raised their hand and said, "I'm going to make your point."
Uh huh.
That's not the same thing.
Exactly.
Yes, I have been in plenty of groups with you where you've been the person who does that for everybody, and that's like I think that makes social interactions so much easier in a mixed group like that
Yes, it does.
because it really does, and it's something that I started trying to do after I saw you do it so much because it is something that it makes everything feel so much more personal
Mhm.
and personable. Like you no longer feel like okay, we all just talked and then we're going to get into this group. It makes you feel like a more active participant when somebody else is saying to you, like, okay, I heard you say this.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, oh, I did
Just
say
say
that.
that.
I did say that. That's
Exactly.
smart. And it yeah, and that's like goes into a whole bunch of other different stuff, but it makes things so much easier. And that is something that I think a lot of women just enjoy having that recognition. If I can stop hitting my mic and make unpleasant sounds for you guys, I will try. um, but yeah, it does make things I think easier if you are just giving credit where credit is due.
Mhm.
When things are happening, I get it. You want to look smart, but is that really that important in
Exactly. And you
a
will look,
class?
personally, from my experience,
You
you
look
look
you look dumb to
smarter.
everyone else.
Yeah, you look dumb when you hijack it, and you look smarter when
Yeah,
you actually say, "Oh, it came from this person right here," because it
right,
shows, not only do you know how to use the resources around you, not only did you work as a group of individuals, you further your understanding of a point. And that
right,
is smart, and the smartest thing you can demonstrate in front of
right,
anybody, when you can
right.
on the spot further your understanding of a point. And people don't do that enough. Like people
They
people
don't.
are really really bad at it, and it makes you look stupid. Because
It
everyone in the
does.
group, because when you answer, sometimes you fuck up the wording, and everyone knows. Like, yeah, he didn't say that shit. There's no way.
That's not right.
There's no way.
There's no way that's what he came up with. Yeah.
So for solutions, we need a way to get our media, and this is my personal solution. Hopefully Quinn can add on to this, but we need a better way to not one test our media sources and what we're putting out there, and two, faulting them for it. We need a way to make them bad. Like you should lose an automatic 3 points on or whatever the test thing is.
Uh,
Like you should
I
lose
I
points for
wish
it.
I wish so badly. And okay, here's the thing that I've started using that there is somewhat of a solution to that. I use Letterboxd now,
Okay,
which
what's
is
this?
it's like this, so it's a social media app but for movies.
Uh huh.
So you log what movies you watched, and you can like say if you liked them, and you can leave a review, and you can leave stars for yourself, and you can also put them on lists. And so far the list feature has been my favorite because I can literally look up women directed movies, and there will be thousands of lists that
Mm.
are just other people have made of movies that a woman directed.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um and I can see different recommendations from around the world, and I can see all of these different perspectives put into it. And you can do that for any kind of, grouping of media. Here, let me just pull something up and give an
Mm.
example.
While
Um,
she gives that example, I'm going to hijack her point and say letterbox is this also. I'm joking.
I wish. Um, okay, so popular this week is the 2021 Oscars. So it's just a list of all of the films that were nominated for any prizes at the Oscar, any
Oh,
awards.
that's cool.
Um, one that I follow that I think is hilarious is movies that are actually gay rom-coms but are advertised as men being cool. This includes movies such as Inception, Reservoir Dogs, Fight Club, Tenet, all of these movies that at the end of the day was probably just a gay romance. Um, but it's supposed to be like guys being dudes, you know?
Yeah.
And so like because they're user creative, they can get really creative like that,
Uh huh.
or they can be more serious. Like you can type in, women directors, and you're gonna find a whole bunch of them that are like, okay, here are movies that I watched in 2018, and these are all directed by women. These were written by women. You can look up, black filmmakers, and it's going to show you, a bunch of lists that different types of people have curated, and you can see a whole bunch of different perspectives
Is Tropic Thunder
from.
gonna be on there because that blackface was incredible?
Oh, I could talk forever about Robert Downey Jr.'s blackface in Tropic Thunder.
And that shit is hilarious. How many people go to defend that motherfucker? Anyway,
How many?
I would say that that's an amazing tool. I actually really like that's something that's out there. I'm gonna really have to look into using that because a lot of times, we really just take it for what it is, right? And like, oh, that's the way it is. That it is what it is. Like I hate that fucking saying.
It is what it is.
I
Yes,
hate those
it's
sayings so much with a passion. Not that like that. Obviously, that's comedical. It was meant to be funny. But like when people
right.
really take things for face
When they
value,
really believe that it just has to be the way that it is.
yeah, that's not the way it is. And
It's not.
and things do change. You know what I mean? And if you really like listen to the Tupac song, when he says that's just the way it is, things will never be the same. That's just the way it is. Like you hear how Tupac is saying, like things have not changed, things will not
Mm-mm.
change unless you force change. That is literally what the song is saying. So things are
Right.
never just the way it is. Things do change. You just have to force
Hmm.
that change upon them and be the person in society creating the change. And I think we can do that really in our media. I always said if I make it to the presidency, if I make it to Congress, I really want to be the individual to create a database like how I think they have one in the UK, if not the UK, in an area like that, where all of our
Hmm.
media has to follow a strict schedule or not schedule, sorry, a strict way of reporting and let their biases be known. This needs to be something
Right.
brought to the states,
Oh,
and it can't be
yes.
like, oh, you have to go find it on your own. Like, no, you should be able to go to a nonpartisan or bipartisan, whatever the fuck it's called. Go to one of our government websites, look up news, and it gives you the news raw. It doesn't give you any other
Right.
filler. No, it gives you everything within there without any bias, or if there is a bias, it let the bias be known. It says this is more
Right.
conservative leaning, and this writer is more of a left leaning person. This writer typically has some weird opinions. Like let you know. And I think that would be really lovely. It should be ran by some other party outside of our government, but in collusion with our
Right.
government, obviously. Just because,
Can't that word is so tainted.
yeah. Yeah, that I didn't mean to say it that way, but like it needs to be ran and handled with great care, obviously, because that can be a lot of power.
Right.
But if we don't have
Absolutely.
that, and we don't have it now, look how bad things can be. Like, this is how bad
Oh,
things can be. So maybe we should start creating these things. I'm just saying.
yeah. I definitely think it's at least worth considering, at
Uh
least
huh.
worth thinking about in whether or not that becomes, the play in the way that things are executed. Things like that need to be explored.
Exactly.
Ideas like that need to start being explored. Or you're right, nothing is going to change because then nothing has happened to make any change.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so if I mean, I would say letterboxed and other things like that, groups that people talk to, movie groups, things like that, are ways to I always think that the best way to go about watching or consuming media is to consume as many different perspectives as you possibly can.
Yes.
Um, and I think tools like that make it a lot easier to find other perspectives.
Mhm.
Um, which I think can be really important in changing people's minds, humanizing groups, um, letting different stories be told to groups who might not otherwise have access to it. And I think all of those are good things that media does. Those
Yes.
are all positives in a landscape that is often overwhelmingly negative.
Yeah.
um, but there are positives, and I think that if we are looking for those positives and those things that could be potential solutions, and in good faith try and
Mhm.
make them work, we're going to get somewhere.
Yeah.
At least it might not be the final solution to anything, but it's a start. And if there is no start, then nothing is going to happen. So
Exactly. So I guess we can do a brief recap here because we have been live for 1 hour 47 minutes. Thank you all to
wow.
the who joined us for all the support. And let's do a brief recap. So
All
to
right.
start off with, not all men. We all know
Not
this.
We got it. We know it's not all of the men. Thank you.
100%. So stop saying it and come up with
Listen, just start. Let's keep the mouth closed and let's open our ears and listen.
Exactly. It is not all men. We are aware of that. If you are one of the men who believe yourself to be a good man in this society, you don't need to state that for the rest of the good men in society. We will find our
They'll
way
see
to
it.
do so and
You'll
people
see it.
will see it. Next step. When making or in a situation where you can tell someone is being advanced on, especially in our society, this typically happens from a man to a woman. But there's many other places where this happens. Some guys get hit on by girls that they don't want to be hit on. There's a lot of situations where this happens. Just be willing to step up, be willing to do it in a way that's not only safe for you but doesn't bring too much pressure onto the individual that is happening to. You don't have to
Right.
do what they do in the movies and get all face to face with them like, are you okay, are you good, is everything okay? That
Just
makes
let
them
them walk away.
just let them walk away. If they're not safe, then they will invite themselves into your presence because you stood up for them, most likely. This
Right.
is not always the case, but just keep an eye out then after. I recommend being more willing to be straightforward and like blunt in your approach to the situation. Call them out directly. If it's a guy staring at a girl, be like, hey, what you looking at? Just call them out directly. If they're walking too closely or following too closely to a girl at a party, walk up and ask them like, hey, what are you doing, bro? You good? How you doing? And really cause that individual that's doing this action or creating these actions to have to sit there and interact with you, and also allow the other person to just get away from the situation if that's what they decide to do. If these people are meant to be together, they will let you know that. It is that
Right.
simple. If they're friends, if they're boyfriend, girlfriend, if they're married, they'll let you know that. And
They'll tell you.
you was just going about your day. It doesn't hurt you. You were just trying to do the right thing, and that is okay. Um, Furthermore, we touched on media. In media, be willing, like she said just a couple of minutes ago, to consume media from all perspectives. It's going to get hard because you're going to find a lot of people that believe in some bullshit. But it's good to know what
Oh,
they believe.
yes.
It's good to know what they believe in. Um, be mindful of the space that you take up and you create in a situation. If you're a guy walking around with your shirt off, don't go into any places of business with your shirt off. Put a fucking shirt on. Don't walk around in a location where there is a concentration of women and try to make your presence more known. Just get out of the way. You know what I mean? Don't watch people stalkingly at a gym, but when you're out in a parking lot and you see someone walking by themselves to their car, be mindful that that person is walking by themselves and keep an eye on them and keep an eye and awareness out for any weird and suspicious actions that can be taking place around you. Always do that. If you're a lot of these big macho men think that they're doing that already. You're not, because you still say not all men. Anyway, um, and
You're still saying not all men. You didn't get the point.
you did not get the point of being this someone who was meant to be macho, quote unquote, right?
Right.
Um, from what Quinn said, when women are in media and being portrayed in media, keep cautious of how they are being used as a device in that story. Whatever movie you're watching, is just be cautious and aware of what kind of women that they're portraying, and then make sure you're not thinking that's how all women should react or that's how all women are. There will be some out there that are like that, but that doesn't make it all of them, right? Fair.
Right.
The same
Right.
argument, right? Not all men,
Yes.
not
Not all
all
men,
women.
not all women. And also just kind of think about the realisticness of their reactions. Um
Hmm.
eh, Especially when it comes to men doing heinous things and then being forgiven.
Yes.
I see that so often, and it's like she wouldn't she
Yeah.
wouldn't forgive you for that. She
Exactly.
wouldn't do it.
That's not
So
how this world
just
works.
right. Think about what is the male fantasy and what is the reality for women in society.
Exactly. And like most importantly, it's not the world. That's not the real world. It's really
Mm-mm,
not. It's not how shit
mm-mm,
works.
it's not.
Like sometimes they get close, but not all the time. This is not. It's a movie or a TV show. It's meant to be education. Well, not educational. It's meant to be entertaining for the most part. Education is probably like the
Right.
least thing sometimes.
It's the
Um,
bottom a lot of the time.
and then it's also I think the number one takeaway from all of this, number one importance, is educate yourself. Don't force other people who have an opposite opinion of you to educate you on their opinion. Go out, seek the resources, seek the information, get the right information. If it seems off, if it seems like something's wrong, seek it in multiple places until you can find a linear connection. This is
Yes.
the most important part of any of this stuff. I think. If Quinn, if you have any other solutions you might like to add, please do so.
No, I think we had a really good conversation about all this. I think yeah, I think educating yourself is the first step to figuring out how to be a better ally in all areas of life. Um Seek out women's voices, seek
Hmm.
out their writing, read some bell hooks. It's good for you.
I love it. And if you're okay with it, where can people not learn more about you, but find you? if you're okay with it, social
Oh,
media, all of
yes.
that
Yeah,
good
that's
stuff.
fine. If you love my opinions and want more of them, you can follow my Twitter. It's at Quinn_Lawlor. It's just my name. I tweet all sorts of things that are related to this and also nonsense stuff that make me laugh. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Yes. So please go ahead and find her on Twitter. Follow her on Twitter. Quinn, I
Oh,
wanna.
you can
Oh,
or you can follow me on TikTok at Thembo Diaries.
yeah. She be making
I do.
them
I make
real quality TikToks, man. Like you
absolute
blown away.
quality entertainment.
So again, I want to thank you so much for your time and being supportive. I got two
Thanks for having
big fat
me.
babies looking at me, so I'm gonna have to go take care
Ye-
of some big fat babies.
yeah, let me see them. End the live stream so that I can see them.
Okay, we will do that. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you. If you're not already, please following. But with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. We will be streaming to again tonight, probably like at 10:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, playing video games. So it's not gonna be the same stuff that you got here right now. But if you want more of this, please follow because there will be more of this. And that's it. Peace out. Love you all. Bye.